Still me in the studio, the one and only Teej, coming to you live from the Jack and Joe Senator Studio. Specific. Oh, I see you laughing there, Terry. Yeah, laugh it all up. Coming to you live from the Jack and Joe Senator Studio, part of the Electronic Media Division at CCM. And I came to an epiphany recently. Some events have occurred, and it really reminded me of when I was interviewing for my first job. I was, let's see, how old was I? I was 15 years old, and I was just looking for a job just about anywhere. I would work anywhere. I just wanted to get into the workforce. I wanted to start building my resume. And of course, when you're that age, you really only have one option, and that is food service or working at a retail shop that uses slave labor. And so consequently, I picked the former. And, it worked out. I kind of liked being in the kitchen, but I just remember that interview, that first interview being called in, and I'm nervous. I really don't know what to expect. All I want to do is do the best job that I can, but I don't have work experience. And, I got halfway decent grades, I suppose. I got extracurriculars. I've done some volunteer work. I've been in a kitchen before, but more than anything else, I was just trying to hope that my attitude would carry it forward, ultimately. And I thought, I told the boss right there, I'm just like, I'm willing to show you what I got. And that was enough. I got hired right on the spot, and I worked there for 3 years. It was miserable, but I worked there for 3 years. And I took that experience and was able to take it on from there. And it wasn't until recently that I started to doubt what I did back then. And I didn't realize that I was setting my sights too damn low. And I know that sometimes that's what a lot of people have. They don't have that confidence to carry themselves to their full potential, They're afraid to try sometimes. And I was not aware that I was more than qualified at the age of 15 to be Secretary of Education. What the hell is going on in the world, ladies and gentlemen, and all you beautiful people out there? Because I do not know. Last week, I shared with you the the office number for Rob Portman, our Senator, Ohio, if you're listening in Ohio, of course, as well as his email address, which I don't have his phone number with me immediately, but his email address is senate.portman.gov. And if you have something that you've been pissed off about, like, I don't know, Betsy DeVos, I think that it is pretty important that you let him know just that, And I was trying to get ready for this show. I was really trying to put something positive in it, and unfortunately, I made the mistake of watching C-SPAN for the past week. And it did not fare well for my psychological health. Oh my God. And it got to the point on where I wrote a letter to my senator. I've never done that before, actually. I've always wanted to. I've participated in, protests. I've signed petitions. I called a senator one time, but I have never written a letter to a senator. But I am this angry over our new Secretary of Education. If you are not familiar with Betsy DeVos, I can't even pronounce her name at the moment, DeVos, let me tell you, she is overwhelmingly unqualified to be in charge of elementary school, let alone the Secretary of Education. It's embarrassing. And the worst part about it is that it continues on this tangent of, well, there's a lot of conflicts of interest in our government right now, and it goes right to the top. It's one of those awkward moments where you kind of thought that that's what was going behind the scenes anyways, but now they're up front with it. And I am not comfortable with them being that comfortable with that kind of experience right there. That drives me nuts. And so I'm upset. And I hope that you're upset about this too, because to me, education is the most fundamental concept of having a society. If you don't want to be educated, then why have a civilization? And so I have this letter that I drafted up, and I have yet to send it to Senator Portman. I am planning on making sure all the grammar is correct in the morning, because, it gets a bit hazy sometimes on these long days. But I absolutely intend on sending this to Senator Portman tomorrow morning. And I would love to share this with you. And again, if any of you share my feelings of loss, write him. Senate.portman.gov. Remember it. Because it's probably not going to be the last time you have to go there as well. So let me get this for you here. Senator Portman, I want to personally apologize for not writing you sooner. I wanted to share what one of your college-age citizens is thinking. I never found it necessary to contact my legislators. However, I feel it's my civic duty to inform you how outraged I am over your decision to vote in favor of Betsy DeVos for Secretary of Education. Much like the majority of our country, I have been overwhelmed the past few weeks by the surreal political movement in this country. Although I desperately attempt to be optimistic, I do consider DeVos's appointment as nothing short of tragic and a giant blow against the peaceful and responsible future for America. Our public education system is absolutely in desperate need of reform. I've spent the vast majority of my life in Ohio public schooling, where I was harassed, humiliated, and eventually ignored and pushed aside by the staff and administration. Despite my experience, I find it morbid to think the future students having to participate in a similar program led by DeVos and her lack of guidance. DeVos has absolutely no experience in public education, no concept of what it's like to struggle to afford higher education, and made it painfully obvious that she has no knowledge of education evaluation. I've got to ask, on what grounds does she have a platform to speak for the American people on education? I've read the defense of your vote. It was released by your office, and I really got to say, I found it embarrassing. Having spent countless hours reviewing C-SPAN in the last week, I do not understand how you draw the conclusion that DeVos intended on protecting the rights to an education for students with disabilities, ensuring that each student receives a quality education, an attempt to have higher education accessible and affordable to all Americans. You, as well as I, saw how she demonstrated a complete lack of knowledge when it came to the roles of Secretary of Education. It was a downright embarrassment to the appointment process. I was especially appalled by DeVos's response to Senator Franken's inquiry regarding whether she found growth or proficiency to be a better measurement of educational institutions. As a firm believer that an educated populace ensures a responsible and positive society, I am extremely fearful as to what this may mean for the future of our country. As a recent product of the current system, I can tell you firsthand that students are not learning or being taught basic steps of critical thinking. I am disturbed by the passive approach of restructuring our institutions. To touch on the pandemic of fake news being spread upon the internet, we're taught in schools to sensationalize trivial information and regurgitate it amongst our peers and elders. It's exactly that kind of small-mindedness that takes to fascism, which seems to be a great way to describe this rising political regime. I can't imagine anything more un-American than leniency towards fascism. But lately, I appear to be continuously wrong about the integrity of this nation's people. Senator Portman, do you know why strong public schools is important? It's fundamental that each citizen is provided a comprehensive education as it inspires the best in our society. Often it's described as civilization is only as strong as its weakest link. I'd like to paint that on a point on a larger scale. A society can only progress as far as you inspire it. It is my aspiration that the next generation is considerably better than me. In my understanding, the most that I can hope to achieve in this world is that not just my potential children, but everyone's child is more intelligent, more compassionate, more understanding than myself. You cannot deny the absurd amount of hate in this world. But can you not also agree that educating young minds is a peaceful way to bridge some understanding? On this level, I have to argue it's apolitical. Democrats, Republicans, socialists alike, we all agree education is fundamental. I suppose where I get confused is when these values aren't demonstrated openly in our culture. Our American football stadiums receive funding before our schools. Teaching positions are drastically underpaid and overworked, and the quality of education students are receiving is embarrassing. I was lucky enough to end up in one of those wealthy communities, but even I had to wade through my fair share of American football coaches, child molesters, religious purists, and alcoholic instructors. Our education system is underfunded, archaic, and dysfunctionally structured to the point on where I sometimes question why our government bothers with enthusiasm. How is a course on ethics and philosophy not a requirement for high school students? I had a cousin that taught public Montessori here in Ohio. After 5 years of fighting the Board of Education so that she might properly instruct her kids in the Montessori method, she gave up. You know what she did? She moved to South Carolina, where she is absolutely thriving in a positive educational atmosphere. Still public, but willing to focus on the needs of the individual students. Schools aren't to be run like businesses, Senator. What they produce are living, breathing, unique beings capable of their own thoughts, so long as you allow them. Most importantly, they don't react the same as a car on the capitalistic market. Public education can be done properly if we stop talking about how much we love schools and actually pitch in to help. Ironically, talking about how much Betsy DeVos loves schools seems to be all she knows about the topic. Senator Portman, I haven't yet mentioned the impact carried by DeVos even being considered as a candidate. I don't know if I have ever seen people so scared over a political issue in my entire life. The Trump regime is looking more and more like an oligarchy each day, and it's causing restlessness in its citizens. I appreciated Senator Sanders when questioning DeVos on whether she thought she would have been considered for this position had her family not donated $200 million to various Republican causes. Where did this woman come from, and how did it get this far? I understand there comes a level of respect that's brought by a president's choice for cabinet members, but I don't know if you've noticed, the rules to this political game have significantly changed recently, and I cannot accept that half of our Senate hasn't yet caught on. Tolerance towards any type of oligarchic movement is a form of surrender. By the time you start giving a damn again, you no longer have the authority to stop it. I'm about to graduate from university, Senator Portman. I hope to have a 3.8 GPA by the end of this semester. And after putting myself through college, I'll be around $30,000 in debt, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. The kind of support and representation that I receive as a citizen in Ohio makes the thought of living here very unappealing. I've lived here nearly my entire life, and I'm not sure where to call home. I know I'm not alone. There are several students in my graduating class that intend on leaving. And I was just curious what you thought of some of the best and brightest young Ohioans feeling like they're being forced out of their homes, being forced out of their birth state. You know, it's a dark thought, but perhaps that's the intention. It's certainly a lot easier to represent an uneducated populace too unmotivated to protest. And I hope that you don't take offense to that thought, but I only vocalize that because I am so unsure about the world anymore. Senator Portman, I was raised by my mom, a loving caregiver, a very educated and patriotic government employee, and a daughter of the first American Revolution. She's helping my little brother start college at Kent in the fall. And I called her yesterday to see how she was doing. She was in tears. The Trump administration and their infinite repercussions, Governor Kasich cutting off library funds, DeVos's appointment, and not to mention all of that hate widespread in between. She now feels abandoned by her country, her state, her community. And I have never heard her such a state in my entire life. I just wanted to share that with you. I found it shocking. I didn't know what to think about it. And honestly, I can't help but think you're partially responsible. Senator Portman, you are an elected official of Ohio and a representative of the American people and spirit. And although we disagree on several fundamental issues, I still expect you to serve in the best interest of the public, regardless of party affiliation, just as you expect individuals such as myself to represent law-abiding citizens. I'm not sure if you describe yourself as a pragmatist, a utilitarian, or you determine your personal ethics on another level of rationality. But enabling a solipsistic child to use his imagination when it comes to the power of the presidency, that cannot be construed to benefit the American people. Senator Portman, I have 18 credit hours this semester, a capstone project due by its end, an internship. I work 2 jobs, and I run a college radio show to keep afloat in this crazy world. And I took time out of my day to write to you. I may just be a voice to you, but I'm far from alone. The American people are scared, Senator, and there's no one really reassuring them at the moment. To say DeVos's appointment was a conflict of interest is a gross understatement. And if this is the sort of thing, this is the sort of representation we're to expect from you, I'm all the more troubled. This is not normal, Senator. Things are not okay. You're allowing this corruption to run deep, and it's so much more difficult to remove it. You are the voice for Ohioans. You are a voice for Ohioans, and you need to draw the line. The American people can only take so much before they snap. Do not wait until it directly affects you. Take action now. Do what's right. The world is watching you. And as this is my first letter to the Senate, I hope it didn't run too long. Sincerely, Teej. P.S. I haven't really had enough opportunity to travel as much as I'd like. I know we've only just been introduced, but could you recommend a place that would be a better cultural fit for me? Cheers. So, I'm going to be sending that in the morning, and I hope that I'm not the only one who's going to be sending something out right there. Because I'm really, really just disappointed. I don't know what else to call it. Here's Chumbawamba.